I am going to whip stitch together 4 crochet squares to show you the technique and what it looks like. It's got reasonable stretch to it. The actual stitches are quite neat, and you could use a contrast yarn as I have here to make a bit of a statement piece. Yeah, it's a nice stitch to use. If you use the same coloured yarn as your squares, motifs or panels, you don't really see the join. So I'm going to start with a length of yarn that is at least 2 times the length of my overall seam that I want to join together. Starting with just 2 squares, I place the right sides together so that the wrong sides are facing out. My squares that I am joining have got 2 corner chains at each of the corners, and I'm going to whip stitch both of them to begin with. I am only placing my needle for every whip stitch through the back loops of the squares. So square 1 is the one that is closest to me and square 2 is furthest away. So the back loop of square 1, as it would be on its right side, is the loop that is closest to me, and the back loop of square 2 is the loop that is furthest away from me. Let's start this whip stitch join. My needle is going from front to back through the back loop only of the first chain in square 1. I'm pulling the yarn through and leaving a 5 to 10 centimetre tail, which I can tether down with my thumb. Next, my needle is going from front to back through the back loop of the first chain of square 2, the one at the back. With whip stitch, the needle is always placed front to back and always from square 1 to square 2. So you can speed this up and work the needle through square 1 and square 2 at the same time before pulling through the thread. After about 4 centimetres, you might need to do what I call zipping up the yarn, where you pull the 2 yarn ends together and it pulls the seam join together really tightly. And then you can just continue to whip stitch all the way up to the corner chains. At the corners, I'm only joining one of the 2 corner chains on each side. The other 2 corner chains are required when I come to do join 2. Now I add in the next 2 squares and place them right sides together, wrong sides facing out. Starting with the corner chain, whip stitch the 2 new squares, binding them to the original 2 squares. Every 4 centimetres or so, I'm going to zip up that yarn to create a really nice, neat, tight join, and then continue to whip stitch to the end, and the end is when I have done the corner chains, 1 corner chain on each side at the very end of the squares. To start join 2, I'm rotating the squares by 90 degrees. I'm cutting another length of yarn and I'm threading it through my needle. I want to flip so that the right sides are together and the wrong sides are facing out, but I also want to make sure that I'm joining the right sides and not actually creating a tube. Now I'm joining both corner chain spaces as I did at the beginning of join 1. I'll whip stitch all of the remaining stitches, and basically it's working front to back in the back loop of square 1 and then front to back in the back loop of square 2, and repeating that for every available stitch. At the corner chain spaces beyond the beginning ones, I'm only working 1 of each of those chain spaces because in the centre cross the extra ones have already been utilised, and at the top I only need to use 1 of each of them. When all 4 squares have been whip stitched together, the visible stitches are really quite neat, as is the central cross. I think it looks quite nice in a contrast yarn colour, but if you want an almost invisible join, then what you really want is my third and final sewn join recommendation, which is the mattress stitch.